In the process of talking about putting together a good hymnal, he said there are 10 rules, and here are his 10. 1. Hymns are for devotional purposes, and they need to be joyful. 2. They are for instruction and admonition. 3. The words and the music should, as he called it, breathe as one. 4. A hymn should treat only one subject. 5. Within the hymn book there should be a beginning, a middle, and an end. The beginning should be psalms, the middle hymns, and the end spiritual songs. 6. Sentences should be brief. Alexander Campbell said that. In a hymnal, sentences should be brief. 7. The style should be simple. The style should be simple. As in, forthwith to be immersed. Yes, that's simple. 8. A profusion of ornaments should be avoided. In other words, he's talking about runs and just be simple quarter note singing. And number 9, a sounded epithet should never be used to furnish the requisite number of syllables. What that means is if you're singing the text of Amazing Grace and you have a long meter hymn, don't sing, Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me, la la. Don't say a sounded epithet, as he says, in order to fulfill the number of syllables. That's just silly. And number 10, every hymn should be adapted for congregational singing. There are 2 purposes of the hymnal, and that's to praise God and to edify man. Well, as long as Alexander Campbell was alive and functioning well, he was able to keep the movement together with one book for one people. But as he got older and began to hand over his hymn book to others, immediately the question became, what is the direction for the movement at this point? By 1863, there were a lot of churches calling for a new hymnal. And Isaac Arrett, the editor of the Christian Standard, with Standard Publishing, offered to buy the rights from Campbell in order to help create a new hymn book. So Standard Publishing was going to publish a new hymn book. And Campbell agreed in 1864 to sell the rights of his book on 2 conditions. Number 1, that the money from the sale would be held in a trust for the American Missionary Society, and number 2, that the profits from the hymnal would go to the American Missionary Society. So you might assume that the hymnal, Psalms, Hymns, and Spiritual Songs, was now going to be published by Standard Publishing, and that all would be well, and everyone would still be together. However, back in 1848, A.W. Leonard had started the first competition to Campbell, and all of that kind of came to the surface here in the 1860s. In 1864, they took the hymnal then to a committee to see about revising it. The rights were in the possession of H.S. Bosworth of Cincinnati. In 1865, after a good amount of time with this committee, the revisions were made. It wasn't much different from Campbell's hymnal, except that Campbell's name had been removed, and there were some hymns that were added that Campbell had never included, such as Amazing Grace and Jesus, Lover of My Soul. A big change, though, is that they began to include music in the hymn book. Campbell was against it, and that's why they took his name off of the book. But this is what the American public was looking for by this point. And so by 1870, the hymn book, being published with music and having all these things, was selling for 90 cents each. Well, compared to 37.5 cents, that was pretty expensive, and a lot of people were complaining about the price of the book. What's more, by 1880, there were some concerns, because you remember the hymn book, there was a fund from that hymn book that was going to the American Missionary Society, and there was an article in Christian Standard that said, has the hymn book fund ever been misappropriated? Wow. So, Psalms, Hymns, and Spiritual Songs by this point changed names. It was now called the Revised Christian Hymnal. And you might assume that it was still going to be published by Standard Publishing, but they put out bids for other publishers. J.H. Fillmore was one of those. He's, of course, Henry Fillmore, one of the sons of A.D. Fillmore of Cincinnati, and we know about Fillmore Brothers Publishing Company. Another was H.S. Bosworth of Cincinnati, and he offered a royalty of 21 cents per copy. 21 cents out of the 90 would go to the American Missionary Society. Well, the bid went to Bosworth. Standard Publishing didn't even bid on this, and Bosworth put together an editing committee to work on the words and the music, and of all ironies, J.H. Fillmore was on the committee to work on the music. Anyway, many in the movement didn't want Sankey and Bliss, no gospel songs in this, because it's a hymnal, and as you can see, that's the beginning of the division between non-instrumentalists and disciples, but we're not yet there yet. By 1881 came the big division, the Great Controversy. Here we go. Christian Standard was urging everyone to buy this new hymn book. It's gone through all these years, and now it's going to be called the Revised Christian Hymnal. Everybody buy it. 1882, the hymnal was ready. It was advertised in Christian Standard. One hymn book for everyone. Yeah, one book for one people. There was another hymnal called Good as Gold. Good as Gold sold for 10 cents a copy, and it was a words-only edition. So could the Revised Christian Hymnal come out in a words-only edition? Well, Christian Standard now published an article that said the trustees refused to consider a words-only edition, that they were against the revisions in the first place, and Christian Standard no longer advertised for the hymnal. In fact, they printed an article that was against it, said it was filled with error, that it was poor quality, and so forth. So on June 14th, Christian Standard, in fact, advertised for a new hymnal by James Henry Fillmore called the New Christian Hymn and Tune Book. It sold for 60 cents a piece. So instead of 90 cents a piece, it was 60 cents a piece, and the most important thing, it included many gospel songs, which Fillmore himself wrote. J.H. Garrison, who was a Disciples branch, said everyone should buy the Revised Christian Hymnal. Don't go with that. David Lipscomb, on the other hand, said, let's go with Fillmore's book. And David Lipscomb, of course, became a leader in the non-instrumental churches, so what became the conservatives. Well, Christian Standard, Isaac Garrett, David Lipscomb, and J.H. Fillmore, that hymnal wound up winning, and it was still going in 1916. The New Christian Hymn and Tune Book, and paired up with Standard Publishing. The Revised Christian Hymnal was gone by 1890. Within 10 years, was no longer being published. So now we know what happened. That was a Great Hymnbook Controversy from 1863 until 1882. Quite a controversy, and it really was the first split in the Brotherhood before the 1906 official listing of different churches. It had to do with hymn books and what was appropriate on a Sunday morning, whether you could sing gospel songs on Sunday morning or even have those in the book that is being used. So there you have it.